Remember when the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence? Take a look at the footage. Absolute chaos. And what the heck is actually going on here? Well, journalist Michael Schellenberger dropped a bombshell report stating that our own government, the CIA, colluded with other foreign governments. And this was in collaboration with the Five Eyes. And the mainstream media doesn't necessarily describe the Five Eyes, but I will. Comprised of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and then the US to make five. A little backstory, this alliance was developed out of World War II between first the US and the UK to share signals intelligence. It later evolved into all forms of intelligence. Remember that the Five Eyes were actually a subject of controversy in 2013, if you remember Edward Snowden. So just the backstory, but here's the report. This report comes from sources close to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Yes, a mouthful. Yes, I'll explain it. It was created, this committee, to monitor intelligence, activities, and programs of the government and to report to the Senate concerning these activities and to provide oversight in good nature over the intelligence activities of the U.S. to ensure that everything was in the realm of our beloved Constitution. But ironically, this report is claiming that these sources close to this committee investigation say there is clear and present evidence that the CIA, our own government, asked the Five Eyes to spy on Americans. Better yet, those Americans, of course, are comprised of a list of 26 of Trump's associates. By default, this spy activity tasked by our own foreign government was then used to push the Russia collusion hoax. So let's take a step back. We all remember Russia, Russia. I personally find the whole Russia hoax to be so overwhelming to track moment by moment because there was such an influx of information overload, conflated information, and of course, false information. But we will do our best to get through this, and here we go. We were all told at the beginning when the House Intelligence Committee was presented with information by foreign governments, again, foreign governments within the Five Eyes, about, quote, suspicious activity involving those within the Trump campaign. But according to this report by Schellenberger, that's not the truth. This evidence from these foreign governments was allegedly all manufactured. Essentially, sources close to the investigation say that these foreign governments were called to facilitate a bump. Now, in intelligence terms, a bump is like when a government officer will basically approach someone in what seems to be in an organic manner. So this would be in public, and the Five Eyes, according to this report, bumped these Trump associates in natural settings, curating the perfect opportunity to seamlessly, naturally have an interaction. And when I say natural, I mean something like going to the grocery store and someone accidentally knocks into your cart and then you make some small talk conversation. And if possible, and most likely you hit it off and you see them after that and kind of become friends, build a rapport, act like this is some new friend in your community, totally benign. And this is how the government got around these illegalities of going after Trump, because our own government couldn't technically do it themselves because US law does prohibit intel gathering unless authorized by a foreign intelligence service, hence the term FISA, which stands for Foreign Intelligence Service Act, all right? So you can trust that I'm going to scale it back every single time so we're on the same page and know what the heck we're talking about. Moving on, the government obtains the FISA warrant, of course, to make it seem like everything's all kosher because the weaponization of the intelligence community for political purposes, by definition, is election interference. All right, so these bumps or foreign interactions happen. Remember, the official story of Russia collusion actually kicked off where the FBI was told or alleged in the first place that Australian, again, Five Eyes, Australian intelligence officials had claims about Trump aides that Russia had damning material about Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. And this exchange happened between Trump advisor George Papadopoulos and Alexander Downer, an Australian diplomat. Again, with the Five Eyes at a London bar. And this was in 2016. So I'd like to call this the shot that was heard around the world, being at the bar, having this first bumper exchange. And so the government brings that to Capitol Hill and says, here, potential collusion. And in the beginning, this operation, the FBI called the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. So that's at the top of the Russia hoax. And the intel community full sent on surveillance and intelligence collection, allegedly from there. Let's look at even Carter Page. Schellenberger's report highlights one source saying that Carter Page was basically an easy target because he and others weren't sophisticated enough or experienced enough in dealing with people in the intelligence community, people faking to be their friend and planting things in their heads. So remember, even the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, he's told the Senate Homeland Security Committee that the FBI investigators should have scaled back on surveillance of people like Carter Page in 2017. But the government kept going. And this report also reveals Michael Flynn being one of the targets, right? We remember that. Michael Flynn was targeted and approached by Stephen Halper, a Cambridge, Five Eyes academic, again, who was paid by the US government approximately $400,000 for his efforts to spy on the Trump campaign. At the same time, you have Christopher Steele, who was an intelligence officer, Five Eyes again, for the British government. And until 2009. And then all of a sudden, he creates the Steele dossier in January of 2017 in conjunction with Fusion GPS. So now you have multiple reports going. Remember, the FEC filed a fine on Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Committee because they didn't even report that they had spent money and paid Fusion GPS to obtain this Christopher Steele dossier. The DNC was fined just $105,000 and the campaign itself $8,000, which is nothing, but okay. So surveillance and hysterics continue, and the FBI works to pass off their findings to the special counsel in 2019. Here comes the Mueller report. Right before that, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence releases a 243-page report clearing Trump of all allegations. No Russia collusion at all for the 2016 election. And so after that, it was House Republicans that basically made a deal with the intelligence community, actually, for their documents to be kept in this CIA vault. And these documents were placed in a classified binder from 2019 to 2020. And investigators continued to review all these documents from what started at the top, Crossfire Hurricane, in a small room in Langley being CIA headquarters, with access to raw logs and communications per this report. And it's worth noting that of the Five Eyes, the British government actually responded to inquiries by Public and Stack, Schellenberger, and in the inquiry, their potential overall involvement in this report was what Schellenberger was asking. And when asking the British government, they actually referenced wiretapping, even though wiretapping the inquiry had no reference of wiretapping, according to Schellenberger and Public. So, okay, we're all caught up. The big picture, right? Trump realized what was being done to him, how the FBI and the intelligence community weaponized themselves on Trump. And take a look here. I mean, this whole Crossfire Hurricane report was then declassified by President Trump in his final moments before leaving office, and the materials were moved from Langley agency headquarters and placed in a unknown location, right? Again, remember, everyone said Trump had documents that were classified and lost their marbles. Sure, they were classified, but then they were unclassified, right? The FBI raid reasoning just doesn't add up. It appears that this information incriminates our own government, and they, being the FBI, tried to obtain it, thinking it was in Mar-a-Lago, right? And then they came out empty-handed in that raid. And now they're all worried, right? The government is worried because this is the evidence of pure treason. Treason is, by definition, is the betrayal of one's own government, one's own country, attempting to overthrow the government while cooperating with foreign countries. Hello? That government wants what's in that once classified report. So to recap, they couldn't find anything tying Trump to Russia, and they made up the evidence themselves, funded by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign and the FBI, and used that to get FISA warrants to illegally spy on the Trump campaign. And so for 3 years, at a minimum, more than that, they just basically tried to shut down our own government, screaming that Trump was a Russian asset, and they thought it would work. But now they are desperate and they can't find the material. Government's very reactive, not that smart. And Trump looks like he's indestructible. He's running for president and they're scared. And the FBI, CIA, NSA, the DNC, They're all worried because when he becomes president, it's over for them. He's saving this coveted information for day one when he gets to walk into the Oval Office.